Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Chala Dinkoy, CEO and founder of The Repositioning Expert. I'm here with another edition of the Naked Marketing Podcast, where Jimmy Song is going to get naked with his marketing, probably keep his hat on, and he's going to tell us about his most expensive marketing mistakes. But first, welcome, Jimmy.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
I was just saying how styling you are. And, I did have one guest who had a holster on that was new, but I don't think we've ever had quite styling as you are.
Oh, thanks. The cowboy hat is definitely a part of my marketing. So
oh my God, really? Well, now you have to tell us, what is it that you do and who do you help?
Well, I am a Bitcoin programmer, developer, and educator. So basically, I educate different programmers on Bitcoin, and that's been my business for about the last 4 years, along with a bunch of other things. But that's one that I think is more relevant to this show. Yeah.
So, who is your target?
My target audience are programmers that are interested in Bitcoin, but don't know very much about it. And that's who I sell my courses to. And it's a 2-day in-person course that I do at various places around the world. And I've, I think, done this course on 5 different continents.
Good God. How did you come up with all this?
Well, I came up with it because I was doing it for my previous 3 jobs that I had in the Bitcoin space as a programmer. And one of the things that every company comes up with is, hey, we need to train these developers, but because they don't know what they're doing, how can we get them up to speed? And I came up with a proposal. Hey, I can teach them all this stuff. All of them found it very valuable. And at some point I was like, hey, I think I can sell this to other people as well. Because there was such a demand for it. And I remember going through it myself as a programmer, trying to learn this stuff, and it was very difficult. So, I found a niche market that's worked out very well for me.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language in terms of the niching, because that's the marketing part, but you got to dumb it down for me. What are these programs doing? What do they do?
Well, the programmers need to be trained because they need to learn about the Bitcoin protocol. And, you can have a computer science degree and not know about the Bitcoin protocol because it's all fairly new and it's very specialized towards the Bitcoin protocol. So, teaching them all of that and how it works and why it works and all the different computer science structures around it, including applied cryptography like signature verification and things like that. That requires some level of teaching, and that's where I came up with this 2-day course. And a lot of employers find it valuable because it's an integral part of running anything on Bitcoin. If you have a Bitcoin business, out of the hundreds of Bitcoin businesses around the world, the top ones all have my students in them because that's something I trained specifically for, and they find that valuable. So it's a niche market, but it's something that they need to learn.
It's so niche that I'm having trouble understanding it. So what do these companies do? Is it investment companies that people are is it like Wealthsimple?
Well, it's usually Bitcoin exchanges where you can exchange Bitcoin for dollars or dollars for Bitcoin, or other Bitcoin wallets where you can store your Bitcoin. Businesses of one type or another that are either accepting Bitcoin for goods and services or for dollars or for yen or whatever, or startups that want to do something in the Bitcoin space. They usually need people that are trained in the Bitcoin protocol in order to do it. And as you know, Bitcoin has been going up in price quite a bit. So there's significant amount of interest in building things around it so you can tap into some of that wealth that's out there.
Well, I mean, you don't have to answer me, but is all your money in Bitcoin because you do this for a living?
I have some money in Bitcoin. I won't tell you exactly how much, but a significant amount. And it's because it's a very good store of value and it doesn't sort of degrade away like the US dollar. Most people end up having to store their value in stocks and real estate because that's the only thing that's sort of keeping up with the monetary expansion that's going on. But Bitcoin does a better job and it's more fungible and more liquid. So that's why I keep it in Bitcoin.
I met one woman that I interviewed on this show. Her life changed because she invested in Bitcoin like very, very early on. And then like, and then it just went crazy, right? And so she said she became like a multi-millionaire, and her entire life changed. Like she was in the boats and the yachts and the she had a completely different lifestyle. So I mean, have you seen that happen?
I have. Generally, it's not people that are just spending money frivolously. To hold Bitcoin for a long time is actually quite difficult because the temptation to sell is always there. And if you always think, okay, if I sell now, then I'm going to get this price. But if I sell later, I'm probably going to get a much higher price and be able to buy more things. So the general tendency for people that are undisciplined is to spend it all and then think that they can make it back, and they don't, and they go bankrupt or play in altcoin casinos or something like that. Whereas for people that have held, they've shown an unusual amount of discipline and not sort of tapping into the wealth that's accessible to them. So for a lot of Bitcoin holders, their lifestyle changes, but not necessarily in the way of, hey, I got boats and Lambos now. It's more, okay, I'm planning for the future. I'm making sure that this wealth is sustainable, and it's something that I can live off of and do something with. And I'm going to cut back consumption now so I can save for later. That generally tends to be the mentality. It's what we in Bitcoin call low time preference behavior.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I'm learning so much. Like, you are very unusual for me to have as a guest. So let's talk about marketing. Okay. It's very niche. So it's got to be these people are hanging out all in the same crowd. So do you market, or is it all word of mouth?
Word of mouth definitely helps because most of my students have Twitter accounts or LinkedIn accounts or something like that. And if you go to my website, you can see all the testimonials from them, and it's from them directly. So that tends to be a big part of my marketing is, other students that have taken the course and found it valuable. I've taught over 500 developers, and like I said, they're in companies all over the world. And oftentimes the leads I'll get are based off of them. They'll say, one of the most valuable things that I found was going through Jimmy's course. That's something that you might want to consider for your other developers. And once they find it valuable, well, then, I get more students that way. So word of mouth is definitely a big one. But the other one is Twitter. So I am on Bitcoin Twitter, and that's sort of the place where a lot of Bitcoin people hang out. And I think currently 262,000 followers, something like that. And that's built up over a number of years. And it's largely because that's the main channel through which people get their Bitcoin news. So I do market there once in a while. And I've had success doing that and getting people to, join my course that way. And it's not cheap. So, it requires some level of dedication and things like that. I also have my newsletter and my podcast where I talk about it a little bit. My newsletter has, technical news around Bitcoin. So it's targeted towards this very crowd. And, towards the end, I always tell people, okay, here are the next seminars that I'm going to do, and here's the locations. If you want to apply, click here. I've also had good success with some scholarships. A lot of people in the industry want to see more programmers, especially minority programmers. So I think at one point I gave away something like 30 scholarships just for women. And it brought a lot more women into the Bitcoin, coding space, which was wonderful for, for everybody, right? Like it's good for me, it's good for the student, it's good for the industry, it's good for the people that, paid for their scholarships and so on. And of course, I have my podcast, Bitcoin Fixes This, where I'll talk about it. But yeah, those are the main sort of channels. And, I go on a lot of podcasts like this, and I talk about my course and I am usually positioned as a technical expert. So, the prospect of, like learning from me, I guess, is somewhat attractive in that context.
Wow. Now, it sounds as if you're doing your thing on the Bitcoin Twitter, but talk about your, the naked marketing, expensive marketing mistake that you made.
Yeah, I didn't use social media nearly enough. And it took me a while to figure out that a lot of signups could come through, different marketing channels. So my Instagram account is currently suspended, and it had only like 2,000 followers or something like that, versus like my 260,000 on Twitter. My YouTube channel has around 30,000 subscribers. But I haven't taken advantage, or I haven't been able to take advantage of that to get sort of like the referrals, because almost all my referrals come through my newsletter or Twitter, instead of, say, YouTube or Instagram. I don't even have really a Facebook presence, but that's more an ideological thing. I think they're stealing our data, and I think they're like stealing my personal info, so I stay away. I haven't used LinkedIn nearly as much either. I have a couple thousand followers there. I really could be doing a much better job of promoting there, especially because it's in a professional context. And for a lot of my students, they end up being able to be reimbursed by their employer. So that's another channel that I really haven't tapped into, that I really could have and probably would have made a significant more amount of money. And if you know about Bitcoin's price rise, I've been teaching these classes since 2017. So if I did the marketing properly, I probably could have had, a dozen more students, and that could be like, a couple $100,000 by now, right? Like it could have been a significantly more money if I did that. Yeah, I would say those are it.
That's great though, that you have that awareness. So what's stopping you from doing that now?
That's a great question. I would say, like my lack of confidence in this area, because I know I'm not a very good marketer. I never have been. I'm a programmer by trade. I know how to code things. I'm also a decent teacher. I know how to communicate ideas and things like that. But marketing, that's always sort of been a magic black box that I can't really understand, which is ironic because that's usually how people describe coding, which is what I do. But yeah, it's this, and there are people on Twitter that I'll see that are doing a much better job marketing than I am. There are people that have come in since I've come into the Bitcoin Twitter space that have way more followers as a result of marketing a lot better. And I can certainly learn a lot from them. And I have, like, I know Peter McCormick and Dan Hill, for example, are two that are really, really good at marketing. And they've both surpassed my follower count by a significant amount, and they have much larger audiences. Now, they're not technical per se, and they're not marketing to the same niche. But yeah, I think a large part of it is I'm not confident enough in doing all of that. And honestly, I'm not sure that I have necessarily the time and inclination to learn all that I need to learn in order to do it. Because I know, like any job, to do a good job marketing, you really need to put in the time and work and energy and even money in order to make it work out for you. And it's just something that I've never really invested as much in.
So that's interesting. So as a marketing strategist, I can tell you 100% that if there's no pain, not enough pain, there'll never be an inclination. And so so it's great that we're talking about it, because so many of my guests fully admit to not being an expert on in marketing. They're an expert in what they do, the 10,000 hours, the Malcolm Gladwell thing. So it's so interesting to hear you talk about the fact that you were never had the inclination so far to go beyond what you've done on your own. And, maybe you never will, because if you don't need it enough, right? If there's not enough urgency. So that's a great point. So thanks for sharing that. Now, what parting advice do you have for our viewers?
Yeah, so for a lot of people, so I discovered this. So I've also written a few books and so on Bitcoin, and they're available on Amazon if you're interested. But the thing that I realized after writing a lot of this stuff is, for a lot of people, they think that creating the content is the end of it. And it's definitely not. And especially for people like me that tend to be technical and work on their product constantly and try to refine it and make it really good. That's not the end of it. In fact, you need to market the heck out of it. So for example, the Little Bitcoin book, which is the second book I wrote, and I had 7 co-authors for it. We managed to get that book translated to something like 17 different languages. The thing that we realized after getting it translated is that you can't just have the content and that's it. You have to have channels for marketing. So, we have the Little Bitcoin book in Farsi, but we don't know how to market Farsi books. So we're kind of stuck there, and we've ended up just sort of like giving it away for free on the internet and things like that, because we think that at least the community can get something out of it. But learning about marketing is an art in itself, and there are all sorts of different channels, and there's like don't shortchange that aspect of it, because it's a very large aspect of what you need to do to become a successful entrepreneur.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now, how can people reach you?
Well, so my website is programmingbitcoin.com, and that is the title of my first book that I published with O'Reilly, who's the premier tech publisher here in the United States. But it has links to all three of my books. Programming Bitcoin, The Little Bitcoin Book, and Thank God for Bitcoin. You can also find me on Twitter at Jimmy Song. You can find me on LinkedIn at Jimmy Song. You can find me on GitHub at Jimmy Song, Medium at Jimmy Song. My newsletter is jimmysong.substack.com. I did have an Instagram account that just got suspended that I'm trying to reinstate. It's Jimmy Song Bitcoin. I'm also hanging out on Clubhouse if you like to talk and stuff. I used to do that a lot more often, not quite as much anymore, but that's Jimmy Song BTC, I think, on Clubhouse as well. But yeah, all of those places have and my YouTube channel is Off Chain with Jimmy Song, and my podcast is called Bitcoin Fixes This. So those are, I think I've covered them all. I forget sometimes, right? You have so many different marketing channels. It's like, yeah, keeping track of it can be a little bit of a challenge.
Well, we certainly know that you're visible.
I try, and that's why I have to wear the hat everywhere I go. Like sometimes if I don't wear the hat, people don't recognize me. They're like, who are you again? And then it's like, okay, yeah, the Asian cowboy thing has definitely worked out for me. And that's one branding thing that if you're going to be a personality, I think is it's like having something, like having a thing is good.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, any kind of differentiator is gold in marketing. You know that, right? You could be wearing red lipstick and you'd still be different, and we'd still be talking about you. So,
a guy wearing red lipstick, that would be interesting.
Yeah, it would be. See, it would be. But thank you so much for being a guest, Jimmy.
Well, thank you for having me.